what the man needed more than being able to walk. In Jesus' opinion, and if it's Jesus' thought and Jesus' opinion, it should be our opinion, the man needed more than physical healing. He needed spiritual forgiveness. He needed spiritual healing. And that's what he received. So let's look at some of these things that the man went through to see how we can receive forgiveness of sins. Now, like I said before, having sinned and having encountered the consequences of sin, having encountered the paralyzation of guilt and really feeling, some people feel that they've sinned so much that there's no way God could forgive them. But God is not only greater than diseases, He is greater than your sin. And there is nothing that He cannot forgive. So let's see what happened with the man. Did the man get up and go to Jesus on his own? The man did not get up and go to Jesus on his own. He couldn't. Now, to receive forgiveness, you have to go before God. And the man couldn't. You might need help going before God. You might need someone to be there with you to help you in these steps. And there is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with getting help. Let me say that again for those of you that weren't paying attention, didn't listen earlier. There is nothing wrong with getting help and getting right with God. There is nothing wrong. These 4 men helped the man get to Jesus. Take whatever help is offered to get right with God, to receive forgiveness of sins. Then, again, I mentioned that the man had sinned. Well, there was a Sunday school teacher in this class of boys, no doubt, 7-year-old boys. And the teacher asked the class, what must you do before you receive forgiveness of sin? They thought for a minute. And then the little boy, little overactive boy, always had to move around. He waved his hand in the air and he says, teacher, I know, pick me. I'm ever so smart. She says, yes, Johnny. He says, before we receive forgiveness of sins, we must sin. Stumped the teacher. When you go before God, don't act like you're better than you really are. You know, this man, he went before God. He was brought before God, and could he act like he could walk? Could he act like he could flail his hands in the air? What did he do when he was before God? He just laid there. He couldn't do anything else. It was the bare truth that he was paralyzed. And there wasn't anything he could do to make himself look better to God. Now, I know some people, even when they had their hand in the cookie jar, will say, I didn't do it. Your hand's in the cookie jar. I wasn't taking the cookie. Your hand is grabbing a cookie. I didn't do it. You can't prove anything. Your hand is there in the cookie jar with a cookie in your hand. Don't tell me you weren't trying to take the cookie. But people will deny they have done anything wrong. And the truth is, everybody has done something wrong. Everybody has sinned. He came, there was no way to make himself look better. He couldn't dress himself. He couldn't feed himself. He couldn't clean himself. And he had to be carried around wherever he went. And then he gets lowered down in front of God. He's just there. And the same way, when you come before God, you need to be open about who you are and what you've done. Because He already knows. If you already feel guilt about it, you know it's there. Go ahead and be upfront and honest with God about who you are. You know, when I prayed to God this morning, not the only time I prayed to God this morning, but I told Him that, you know, I'm nothing. That it takes His Spirit to work through me to take the words that I speak, and it takes the Spirit to put those words into people's hearts and make a change. What am I? I'm just a mouth. I've studied. I've learned. I've wrestled with the text myself. But it's up to God to do these things because I can't change anybody. And just as a physical example that God's given me that I can't change anybody, He's given me 4 kids. Guess what? I can't change them. I can try to stem their behavior, but I can't change them. We are nothing but sinful little creatures that God has made in His image, that He loves with all His heart. Don't try to build yourself up to be greater than you are. Come before God. You want to confess your sins. You want forgiveness for your sins. You confess them. What you should desire is wholeness. What's wholeness? That is being whole in your spirit, in your body, in your emotions, in your intelligence, in your socialness, sociality, socialness, social interaction, social world. See, we come to God and we say, God, I want you to forgive me for my sins. That's 1/5. God, I want you to heal such and such because of the disease they have. That's 1/5. What are we praying for? People's emotions? Are we praying for their social ability? Are we praying for their intellect? Or are we? And when we come before God, do we just pick and choose things we want to ask God for? Or are we trying to grow as a whole person? See, the Hebrews, we tend to think mind is disconnected from body. And spirit is disconnected from both of them. We're a triune person, and so they're just separate parts. But the Hebrews weren't like that. They took all the stuff and they mixed it in a bowl and poured it out, and there you were. Everything's mixed up. Everything's one. Everything's whole. And so often when you see Jesus healing physical things, He's also healing spiritual things. And we have a prime example of where He healed the man's spirit and then healed the man's body. Last week we saw where he healed the man's body and healed his social status and healed his emotions when he healed him from being leprous. So God is interested in making you a whole person. So when you go before God, desire wholeness.